Mr. Sanjay Hegde also on the phone line with us. Thank you for joining us. Mr. Sanjay Hegde, do you think now the matter is settled? The Supreme Court has refused to entertain this plea that sought direction to the President.
See, the Supreme Court entertaining or not entertaining a petition by itself doesn't make law. There are several judgments of the Supreme Court which say that, if they dismiss a petition, that doesn't mean that any law is settled. That being said, the issue is more political than legal. The Supreme Court would have had more than one reason not to entertain such a petition. These are political questions which must be settled in the political field.
Okay, you're saying that, it's a question of politics, but the thing is, the opposition leaders have been saying until now that as the head of the state, it should be the President who should be inaugurating it. This was the argument that was also made in the petition, but it has been dismissed by the Supreme Court.
It has not been entertained by the Supreme Court. There are several reasons why a petition is not entertained. Sometimes the petitioner, his or her locus standi, and also whether the Supreme Court would want to get into what is called the political thickets doctrine. So a mere dismissal may say that there is no case for a court to consider.
Okay. All right. Mr. Sanjay Hegde, thank you for joining us. PTT Acharya, constitutional expert, also on the phone line with us. Mr. Acharya, does the Supreme Court now settle the matter? Because there are a lot of questions that had been raised on what are the rules that are currently in place. Can the Prime Minister inaugurate the building or not? How do you look at this development of the Supreme Court dismissing the petition asking for the President to inaugurate the building?
No, actually, Supreme Court, there is no case before the Supreme Court.
Okay.
This is no case at all. There is no legal issue involved in this. So Supreme Court has rightly dismissed it without going into the merit, because it has no merit which should be considered by the Supreme Court.
Okay.
This is a question which needs to be taken by the executive, who should inaugurate a parliament building or who should inaugurate some other building. That is entirely the domain of the executive. And court doesn't come in this picture at all, because there is no legal issue involved in it. And there is no violation of any rule or any protocol or anything. So that is why the Supreme Court has not interfered.
Okay.
The Supreme Court
But the petition that had been filed, and what the opposition leaders have been saying, is that the President is the executive or the constitutional head of the government, and that's the reason why it should be the President inaugurating the building, not the Prime Minister.
No, but that is, President is not the head of the government. The head of the government is the Prime Minister. President is the constitutional head and the head of the state. The President is a constitutional head.
Yes.
And President acts on the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers. So that is the position of the President. President cannot act on his own or her own without the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers. So it is actually the executive power vests in the Council of Ministers.
Okay.
Not in the President.
Okay. The Supreme Court has already settled the matter, but sir, you are a constitutional expert. Just to put things on record and to settle it once again, you're saying that there's nothing wrong with the Prime Minister inaugurating the building. As far as the rules are concerned, there's nothing stopping him.
I am not saying anything of that sort. I am simply saying that there is no rule which says that Parliament building or any building should be inaugurated by the President or the Prime Minister. There is no such rule,
Okay.
no protocol involved in it. Therefore, Prime Minister being head of the government, he is fully entitled to take a decision on this matter. The Prime Minister alone will decide whether the President should inaugurate or somebody else should inaugurate.
Okay.
It is not the President who will decide. It is actually the Prime Minister who decides. Because in our country, Prime Minister is the most powerful authority. And therefore it is the Prime Minister who decides finally what should be done and what should not be done on these matters.
Okay, so even though the President is the constitutional head of the government, the Prime Minister is the head of the country, so he can decide who should inaugurate.
No, I'm not, you're misquoting me. That is not what I said.
No,
Prime
just
Minister
issue a clarification on that.
Prime Minister is the head of the government.
Okay.
Prime Minister is the head of the government. And President is the constitutional head.
Yes.
But then that has nothing to do with this inauguration. These are constitutional positions. So far as inauguration is concerned, it is decided by the Prime Minister as to who should inaugurate it. Prime Minister has decided that he should inaugurate it. So that is what he is going ahead with. He is going ahead with that. That is it.
Okay, all right. Mr. PDT Acharya, thank you for joining us on the broadcast and putting things in perspective. The Supreme Court has also dismissed the petition that had been filed. The Supreme Court saying we are not inclined to hear this under Article 32, that we are making it clear to the petitioner. Remember, the petitioner had filed a petition with the Supreme Court with the argument that it should be the President, Draupadi Murmu, who should inaugurate the new Parliament building. Senior advocate Swapnil Kothari on the broadcast with us. There has been a big debate over whether the Prime Minister should inaugurate or not. Now the petition going to the Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court has now settled the matter by dismissing the petition.
Well, the Supreme Court is absolutely right in dismissing the petition because there is no case before the court. And when it asked a pertinent question that did you go to the High Court, that means the Supreme Court is basically indirectly saying that you should have gone there first and do not come directly to us with frivolous petitions. In fact, the petitioner should be happy that no costs have been levied, because when such frivolous petitions are filed before the Supreme Court often gets irked and levies costs. And the very fact that it was very dismissive of it, and I'm using the word deliberately dismissive because it eventually happened to dismiss it in a very cursory fashion. It literally pointed out and sent a strong message that please do not bring these kind of petitions before us, because there is no constitutional provision, clear-cut constitutional provision saying that it is to be the President who should be inaugurating anything of this nature. When absent a clear position on that, it is the Prime Minister's prerogative to decide as to whether he wants to do it or whether he wants anybody else to do it. So you cannot read into a constitution some article or provision that you think should be there according to you. If it's not there, it is not there. Whether it's right or wrong, it's a separate issue. But the fact is that it is not there. And when it is not there, it is the Prime Minister's prerogative, because he is the person who is the most powerful authority in the country. So when he is the most powerful person, as far as something of a parliamentary proceedings is concerned or a parliament building is concerned, he is the person who calls the shots, and he is the person, as we call it in the judiciary, it is the Chief Justice who is the master of the roster. He is to decide as to which cases go before which judge. So if you don't like that, then that is, you have to become the Chief Justice to ensure that you get to do what you do. Other than that, you just have to take it into account as to what is there and what is not there. As we've seen some petitions earlier also against the judiciary for saying that this case should not be there before this judge or anything of that nature. So this is a petition which is on similar lines, saying that this is not what the Prime Minister should be doing. And it is nobody's business, and that too of any petitioner or any one of us, to decide as to what or who is to decide as to who is going to do the parliamentary inauguration of the Parliament building. Because there is no constitutional provision as far as that aspect is concerned. So to say that matters are dismissed routinely by the Supreme Court, sometimes it is not there, sometimes it is not a part of Article 32, sometimes there is no matter before the court, sometimes there is no locus standi, is absolutely something which is technically correct. But as far as this case is concerned, it is a clear-cut message given by the Supreme Court that please do not come before us with these kind of petitions. And the very fact that we have asked you that did you go to the High Court clearly indicates from the Supreme Court, it points out its irritation at that, because very often petitioners misuse Article 32 and try to say this is a violation of my fundamental rights, and Article 32 itself is a fundamental right. So let me go straight to the Supreme Court. But that is not what happened today. Okay, all right. The Supreme Court has dismissed that petition. Mr. Swapnil Kothari, thank you for joining us. We also have Mr. Mahesh Jethmalani on the broadcast with us. Thank you for joining us. Mr. Jethmalani, big victory for the centre. The Supreme Court has dismissed the petition that had been filed for President Murmu to be inaugurating the new Parliament building.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, this was a frivolous petition. And not only has it been summarily dismissed, but the court has said two things. It has first hinted that the real motivation behind the petition was political, right? That you are misusing the platform. And that is further evidenced by the fact that in addition to saying that, in addition to dismissing it summarily, they've also said that you're lucky with not imposing costs upon it. So that's how frivolous the petition was. I mean, there are people who are coming to court and wasting the time of the court on the most misconceived, untenable kind of petition. This is not a matter for the court. This is a matter, at the most, of a difference of opinion as to who should do it. It is not a legal issue.
Okay. We just spoke to Mr. Sanjay Hegde, who said that just because the Supreme Court has refused to entertain this plea does not mean that the top court has settled the matter. But in the petition, the petitioner very clearly says the exact arguments that the opposition has also been making, that President Murmu, as the constitutional head of the government, should be inaugurating the new parliament building, but it has been set aside by the Supreme Court.
But, I mean, with the greatest respect to my friend Sanjay Hegde, his view or his interpretation of the Supreme Court judgment is as misconceived as the original petition itself. I don't want to say anything more on that.
Okay. As far as the opposition is concerned, do you now believe that they would now give in because now the issue has been settled in the top court of the country? Would this now mean that the opposition will have a rethink?
But the opposition should always have had a rethink. I mean, I don't think that if the opposition's legal advisors felt that there was any merit in this petition, the opposition to change its legal advisors, frankly. This petition was pitiable. I mean, it was a pathetic petition. It should never have seen the light of day in the court. The Supreme Court has rightly rejected it with the strictures which it attached to the dismissal. And so the opposition should have rethought this at the very beginning.
Okay.
Now, it makes no difference. I mean, I don't think this is likely to change because the opposition was not waiting for a court decision to justify its original view as to not to attend. The opposition is doing it out of petty politics, and it will continue to do so because the opposition's single point program is based on Modi hatred. That's all. They have no other agenda. They cannot stomach his continuous rise and now his growing world popularity. So I don't expect anything from this opposition.
Okay, but Mr. Jitnal, the opposition was trying to make it about President Draupadi Murmu, saying the fact that she has not been invited for the ceremony means this is an insult to the president. They've also said this is an insult to the entire SAC community. So this argument also being mentioned in the Supreme Court being dismissed also, in a sense, punches holes in what the opposition has been saying all along.
Absolutely. But as I said, this was not an issue in which you need a Supreme Court verdict. This is an issue of common sense. But yes, since now the Supreme Court has also endorsed that common sense view, the opposition has a double defeat.
Okay, all right. Mr. Mahesh Jethmalani, thank you for joining us on the broadcast. Big win for the centre. Legal editor Harish Nair also joining us with the minute-by-minute details of how things really played out, because Harish, it clearly looks like the Supreme Court not just dismissed the petition but also said we are not even inclined to hear it. Take us through what exactly transpired in the court.
Yes, in fact, Pratibha, very brief hearing, but Supreme Court has made things very clear and told the petitioner that any further you argue, we will impose heavy cost on, and this is nothing but a publicity interest litigation and not a public interest litigation. Supreme Court has, in fact, forced the petitioner Jaya Sukin to withdraw his petition and dismissed it. Remember, the petitioner had said that the President of India is the constitutional and executive head of the country, and she should have been invited for the inauguration of the parliament, and it was she and only she could have inaugurated, not the Prime Minister, because it is she who summons, prorogues and also the parliament. And the Supreme Court has taken very serious view of the fact that such a petition has been filed under Article 32 and said that this should not have been filed. We know the intentions behind filing of this petition, and this is nothing but a publicity interest litigation. The petitioner had vehemently argued that what the government has done is nothing but an insult to the Constitution, not only the Constitution and also for the entire tribal community, but Supreme Court has trashed the entire argument and said that this is not the forum for coming and this is the prerogative of the government of the day, and also a policy decision in which the Supreme Court rarely intervenes, and especially such a petition should not have been filed. And we know the motive of this petition, why you have come now, okay, why at this juncture, and as I said earlier, the bench told Jaya Sukin, the petitioner, that if you argue any further, we will be forced to impose heavy costs on you. That is very heavy fine on you for wasting the judiciary's precious
so
time.
Not just dismissing the petition, but also pulling up the petitioner for approaching the Supreme Court with this. In fact, the opposition leaders have also been calling this unveiling of the new parliament bill building as unconstitutional, but that has been dismissed by the Supreme Court. Harish, we'll have to leave it at that, slipping into a very short break here. We'll be right back. Stay with us.